transition from the 20th century way of fighting wars to the ways of the 21st century. The U.S. military have a variety of the latest technologies in weaponry, such as unpiloted aerial vehicles, UAVs, sonic and ultrasonic systems. The long-range acoustic device, LRAD, can be used to incapacitate an opponent. Some sonic weapons systems focus a beam of sound or ultrasound, and other systems produce an area field of sound. These type of systems can be used as signal interrupters to take down UAVs and drones. Although boots on the ground will always be necessary, the number of boots on the ground will shrink. Both the U.S. Navy and the Army have laser weapons, and Russia has the Orshnik ballistic missile system that has the capability Mach 10 speed. The Rods of God kinetic system is a theoretical system that could one day use 20-foot by 2-foot tungsten rods to be launched from space and destroy targets on the ground with great lethal force without radiation fallout. Wars will be fought and won through remote-controlled weaponry from the ground, in the air, and from space. UAVs and drones from nano-size to handheld size to drones large enough to drop bombs and fire rockets and missiles can now be used for pre-ground operations. These advanced multi-purpose systems can be used for things such as surveillance of terrain, troop movement, and other battlefield-type assessment. Military units now have robots designed to replace some boots on the ground. They are multi-purpose robots which can do search and rescue operations, surveillance, both daytime and nighttime, IED search and detonations, and many other ground-type operations. How did we get to this point? Any military action requires intelligence gathering, battlefield scouting, and ground assessment. Military surveillance has been around for thousands of years in one form or another. Battlefield surveillance in ancient times was much different from today. Armies combined scouts, spies, and signal systems together for information gathering and communicating across distances. Scouts and spies were sent ahead of the main army to gather information about enemy positions, terrain, and potential ambushes. Spies were also used for enemy camp infiltration. There are many examples throughout history of scout observations being reported to those of whom they owed their allegiance. Paraphrasing the New International Version of the biblical account recorded in Numbers, chapter 13. As the Israelites were fleeing Egyptian captivity and looking for the Promised Land, 12 men, one leader from each of the 12 tribes of Israel, were sent out to explore the land of Canaan. They were tasked with assessing the land, its people, cities, and soil. They spent 40 days exploring the region. Upon their return, they reported all they had been tasked with. The speculators Augusti were a part of the consularis of the ancient Roman Empire. This reconnaissance agency was used by the Roman military. There are references to a Roman scouting agency operating in the Samnite Wars, 343 BC to 290 BC. Various signaling methods were used for sending messages across distances. The Greeks and Romans used horn, fire, and beacon signaling to convey messages quickly. The Chinese used a more complex system of smoke and flag signaling. As time marched on, so did communications, both in written and verbal forms. Militaries around the world implemented many different cryptology methods to help protect their internal communications from being intercepted. The Bushnell turtle invented by Davis Bushnell was used in the American Revolution in 1775. In 1917, runners were used in World War I to deliver messages from commanders in the rear to the front line in what became known as the Trench Wars. Each new generation builds upon the previous generation's ideas, discoveries, knowledge, methods, and tactics. The 20th century U.S. military's Department of Defense, DoD, along with Defense Advanced Research Projects, DARPA, continually help develop new technologies in both software and hardware applications for real-time battlefield surveillance and assessment. One example of the DoD's and DARPA's involvement in GSR systems development is the Foliage Penetration Radar program. It eventually became known as the Camp Sentinel radar system used in the 1968 Vietnam conflict. During the Vietnam conflict, 17K Kilo was the MOS for ground surveillance radar operators. These highly trained men learned to use their auditory and optic senses, along with the aid of highly specialized equipment, to differentiate between types of troops and machinery in targeted areas. A posting on April 23, 2005 by a blogger by the name Jeff Dadmanley at mymillblogging.com was named a special group of soldiers. Jeff served in the U.S. Army, Army Reserves, and the New York Army National Guard since 1983. During his time in service, he was deployed to Iraq between November of 2002 and 2003 as First Sergeant for Headquarters and Headquarters Company of the 642 Military Intelligence Battalion, stationed at Tikrit, Iraq. And here I quote, "There's a very special group of soldiers who were part of our unit deployed with us as part of Operation Enduring Freedom, OIF-3. They are a tight bunch, and many of them trained together in Guard for several years. When I say trained, I really mean trained. Annual training for these men was not a stay at a Hilton. These men were trying to get survival training at extreme locations. This type of training is important to their job. These men are ground surveillance radar operators. Military Occupational Specialist, MOS 96R. They call themselves the Romeos. As Romeos, their job is to go wherever and do whatever it takes to place highly technical sensors onto the battlefield and direct them against potential threats. Usually that means going way out front on their own, stealthy. They need to get in and out without being detected. So clearly they need to be very tactical. They rely on their basic soldier training and infantry and ranger-type skills. Soldiers from the 642 Military Intelligence Battalion returned home without any combat injuries, and Jeff was awarded a Bronze Star for the deployment. In civilian life, Jeff has been involved in project management. In August of 1993, 10 years prior to Operation Enduring Freedom 3, 10 men from 1st Squad, 3rd Platoon, Bravo Company of the 312th Military Intelligence Battalion, attached to Fort Hood, Texas, was sent to Mogadishu, Somalia, Africa, as part of the U.S.-led task force of the United Nations. These men were 96 Romeos who were trained on a prototype optical surveillance system known as the Nighthawk system. These men and the Nighthawk system were sent to Mogadishu, Somalia for force protection. This team was considered the best of the best at targeting at each NTC rotation. These 10 men were sent for force protection during the military Operation Gothic Serpent, also known as the Battle for Mogadishu, and made famous by the book and movie Black Hawk Down. The Military Operations Specialist, MOS 96R, known as the 96 Romeos, was disbanded in 2006. During the 1990s and up through the year 2014, many Marine, Air Force, and Navy bases, as well as Army posts, were either closed or combined. This was due to an effort made by the U.S. government to streamline the military. Mid-1992, Somalia had become a lawless frontier. 14 tribal warlords and their armed gunmen were the only authority in the country. In 1997, 5 years after Operation Gothic Serpent, also known as the Battle at Mogadishu, Somalia, a documentary was released to the public. The United States Army has a long tradition of assisting in the humanitarian efforts. The United Nations asked the U.S. to assist in getting food and medical supplies to the Somali people when tribal warlords terrorized Somalia and intercepted those supplies. These warlords ruled through influence, bribery, intimidation, and outright violence and murder. These thugs commandeered food from warehouses and convoys, then either sold it at extortionary prices or hoarded it. In response to a worsening famine, the United States decided to assist the relief efforts by airlifting food from nearby Kenya to remote airfields in the interior of Somalia for distribution, thus bypassing congested ports and reducing the need to send out easily looted convoys. Marine General Joseph P. Orr, Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Central Command, appointed Brigadier General Frank Labuti, another Marine, as commander of the Joint Task Force, JTF, named Operation Provide Relief. Operation Provide Relief commenced August 28, 1992. 4. CH-130 aircraft delivered 34 tons of supplies including beans, rice, and cooking oil on the first day. August 18, 1992, President George H.W. Bush ordered 145,000 tons of food, medical, and other relief supplies to be airlifted and delivered to interior Somalia. In December of 1992, the U.S.-led Operation Restore Hope was deeply engaged on the ground. In the spring of the following year, the initial crises of imminent starvation seemed to be over, and the U.S.-led Unified Task Force, UNITAF, turned over the mission to the United Nations. August 26, 1993, the U.S. Army Task Force flew into Mogadishu 440 elite troops from Delta Force and the U.S. Rangers.
Hey, there's this huge sense of urgency anytime a helicopter flies. It's a violent machine. It shakes and it screams. And you're going someplace and you see these guns hanging off the side and all these men with weapons.
It was pulled these like real tight turns. It was almost like you stopped and you were just getting twisted. You know, the bird would shake. And you're looking straight down at like a road intersection, and these people are just looking at you like, you just know that it's fear.
The Rangers' mission was to capture a local warlord named Mohammed Aidid. Aidid had been the most successful general in the vicious civil war that had torn Somalia apart. His ambition now was to unite the country under his own rule. Aidid's authority was absolute and feudal within his main power base in South Mogadishu.
We were told that there's a lot of clan fighting, and the ringleader was Aidid. He was doing most of it.
The GSR crew members are part of military intelligence. They are considered a high-valued asset and are not expendable. They are highly protected by sniper and counter-sniper personnel. They are usually attached to scouts or other special units because of their training in stealth, move, fight, hide, evade, and defend tactics. Like any kind of forward scout or ranger, they also have compartmentalized, top-secret security clearance. 57 years after the beginning of the Vietnam conflict and 31 years after Operation Gothic Serpent, a reunion of GSR operators gathered to induct 10 members into the GSR 17K 96R Ring of Honor. The inductees into the Ring of Honor for the 2024 GSR reunion are Mr. James Banks, Retired Command Sergeant Major Herbert Jim Drost, Retired Command Sergeant Major Herbert Franks, Retired Lieutenant Colonel Bill Innocenti, Retired Command Sergeant Major Gerardus Wyckoff, Mr. David Lively, Mr. John Marr, Retired Command Sergeant Major Roger Leftwich, Retired Staff Sergeant Ross Rutter, and Mr. Greg Bird.